Hello and welcome to the National Leadership Briefing. My name is Doug Sharp and I will be your host for today. Well, I wanted to begin by commending you for the quality decision that you made to join us on this August briefing. It is midsummer and many may have chosen to perhaps be elsewhere enjoying the sun and the fun. However, you saw the importance of joining us today on the briefing because you believe in the value of us coming together, rallying around the things that we believe in and looking for opportunities to advance them into society, culture, politics, and government. Well, let me just share with you now how it is that we're going to help you do that today by reviewing the agenda. First of all, I am going to be reviewing what we call our U training template. This is a training template that you will find on the NLB.ca, nlbcanada.ca website under the NLB Essentials web tab. And I encourage you to go and watch that video and all of the NLB Essentials videos there. But we're going to be focusing on the U training video here today to start us off. Then I'm going to introduce you to 4 of our resource partners. Now, we have on the National Leadership Briefing, we bring you the very best information that we can find in Canada on the issues that are of importance to you. And today, the purpose of us bringing on 4 resource partners all at one time in one briefing is because we are emphasizing today the importance of you working locally to gather people together around you who share your views and values and perhaps may share your concerns in any one of 4 different areas. Now, we use these 4 different resource partners and the issues that they bring forward as examples, but whatever it is that you care about and what's important to you, we believe that that is going to be helpful for you to see how it is we use resources to rally people around us. And I'm going to give you, like I say, these 4 examples today that you can think about and use in your own community, because gathering people around you is a primary objective of the National Leadership Briefing. All right, so let's get started right away because, again, we've got limited time and a lot to cover, but let's get started first of all with our review of the U training video template here. Now, again, the U training video on the website, I want you to go see, but I'm going to go really quickly through this so you understand the foundation of the training. First of all, it says on the video, on the board here, it says first. What comes first? Do you see that arrow pointing to the sky? Well, that is because we believe that first you need to be fully understanding where it is that God wants you to be and what God wants you to do while you're here on this earth. Everyone is saved for a reason. Everyone is here for a reason. And we believe that it's important that you seek out God's voice in your life to be affirming and confirming for you what it is that he wants you to do. That is first, because once you are in that place, we feel that you will have special anointing and covering, and you'll have just providence will just move in behind you and will buoy you in those efforts when you operate where you're supposed to be. Now, we go into greater depth in that on the video, but I point that out because that is where I want you to start first today. Then I want you to, after it is I want you to get in relationship with somebody who's going to help you along in pursuing what it is that you are affirmed in knowing God wants you to do on this earth. Then I want you to go over on this side here. I want you to come and I want you to become familiar with the authorities and resources that you possess to assist you in executing God's call on your life. That's what those arrows are for. Then we train on the video, go into more depth. We talk about your sphere of influence and your need to grow it. We talk about citizen action groups within churches and your need to serve on one. And we talk about also community action councils and the requirement that you are going to see in the future of your need to establish one within your own community. And again, all of this information that I just ran through is in more detail on the nlbcanada.ca website under the NLB Essentials webpage. But what is it I want you to know about this primarily first, before we get into introducing you to these resource partners, is this part where it says SOI, the sphere of influence. That is your sphere of influence that we're talking about. You, whether you like it or will accept it or not, you are at the center. You exist and live and occupy the center of your sphere of influence. And there are people all around you who you can come into contact with and ally yourself with to grow your local sphere of influence. Now, this influence that you have locally, obviously, we want you to use that influence to advance the principles that undergird what we call the 4 pillars. And remember, what they are is, first, we believe that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. Second, we believe that those we elect to serve us in civil government must respect and defend our right of belief and freedom of religion. Number 3, we believe that the laws and policies of civil government must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable that live among us in our communities. And number 4, we believe that civil government must begin the work of removing the burden of debt that they have placed on the backs of our children and future generations. Our children must be born free and must not be bondservants of civil government because of the yoke of excessive taxation. So these things that we believe in together, we encourage you to build a sphere of influence around you of people who share those views and values so that you can grow your voice in advocating on behalf of those principles. Now, this brings me to why it is that we're bringing 4 resource partners together for you today. Is we know through our experience in citizen action that if you have good quality information, that will increase your confidence when using that information to attract people towards you. When your confidence is increased, your level of confidence is increased in growing your sphere of influence locally, you will in fact become more competent in sharing that information, and your influence will grow as your group or your sphere of influence grows around you. Just like the briefing here, as every person that you bring on the briefing every single month, as every single person that you bring to the briefing grows our collective sphere of influence, and what it is that we can say and speak to in the future is increased because we have more authority as we have more people. So this is what we want to focus on today, is providing you quality information so that you can grow your confidence and grow your authority locally and continue to advance these principles into your own local community. All right, well, let's get started first. We're going to take a quick break here, but I'm going to come back here and we're going to introduce you to the very first resource partner of 4. And then to wrap it up today, just so you know, at the end of the agenda today, I got a special announcement about a special event that we've got coming up on August the 10th. So you don't want to miss that. That's a very special event at the end of the briefing today. All right, great. Let's take a quick break, come right back, and we'll get started. Thanks so much again for your time today. God bless. Back in a flash. These are the things that we believe in. First, that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. Second, that those we elect to serve us in civil government must respect and defend our right of belief and freedom of religion. Number 3, that the laws and policies of civil government must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable among us. And number 4, that it is inappropriate to heap debt upon the backs of our children and future generations. They came from you. They're your pillars. They're the things that you believe. Okay, let's get started. Now, we're going to move fast through the 4 segments here because we've got to get through the hour. But first, I want to introduce you to the first resource partner is Alissa Golob. We have a relationship with this organization for a reason. Alissa Golob and her co-founding partner, Scott Hayward, started the organization for a very specific reason, which she'll get into. But I want you to, as you listen to this segment here, I want you to remember that if you have a heart for preborn children and you want to see the advancing of abortion legislation in our nation, or people around you do, remember, we're listening for information that we can use to share with others, to gather people around the ideas so that we can build a coalition locally. Well, let's jump right into it and let's introduce you to Alissa. Well, thank you so much, Alissa, for joining us today. I sure appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
Well, today, as I mentioned before we came on today, I wanted you to know we're talking about the individuals that we serve here on the National Leadership Briefing. Everyone that we serve knows that we have what's called the third pillar, and that focuses directly and squarely on that requirement of those we elect in civil government to pass laws and enact policies that provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable that live among us in our communities. And I know that you and Scott, as your co-founding partner at Right Now, you have been exclusively focused on nominating and electing pro-life candidates. We're excited about your work. We're excited to have you here, but we also want you to bring the latest for us. So let's start there. Why don't we just start out and go, Alissa, where are we at in Canada on the whole life of platform out there, everything that's being talked about right now in Canada? There's a lot of different views and perspectives, but you guys know what's really going on. What is happening in the life movement here in Canada right now?
Well, there's lots with regards to abortion and euthanasia, but I'll just start with abortion. And, the most recent polls show that the majority of Canadians in every province, including Atlantic Canada and Quebec, want restrictions on abortion. So even though the majority of Canadians may identify as pro-choice, they still believe that there should be restrictions on abortion at some point in pregnancy. So that's where we can agree and we can make public policy reflect public opinion. And that's ultimately what we want to do. So you can't think of any other issue, whether it be carbon tax or education or environment issues, anything that has that much support amongst a broad coalition of Canadians across the country. So it is a winnable issue, and it is something that politicians can form policy on and actually win in future elections. So that's ultimately what our goal is, to talk to those politicians, provide them with different types of policy, and then also to elect them and ensure that they vote the right way when the time comes.
Well, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that there's such broad support for these positions out there, because that means that each individual person that we're serving here on the briefing here lives in a community of people where the odds are that there is a broad spectrum of people around them that will agree with you. If you have a heart for the unborn, if you have a heart to protect the vulnerable in your community, the odds are that there are people all around you who share your views and values in that regard. Is that your experience and what you've been finding when you've been working locally with groups?
Oh, absolutely. And even with, our door knocking ventures where we just basically ask people to sign a petition restricting late term abortion, when we go door to door in just random neighborhoods, the majority of people want to sign that petition, even though, again, they may say that they are pro choice at the door, they still agree that there should be restrictions on abortion. So both our evidence on the ground in these different communities and also what the polls are showing, are prove that the majority of Canadians want restrictions on abortion, and that there is common ground there, and it's something that politicians should be aware of.
Excellent, excellent. And one of the things that I hear when I talk to the people that we serve, oftentimes they'll say, well, I hear how, you talk about that issue, Doug, and how people like Alissa talk about the issue of life. And it's just, you seem to explain it better. And it's because you and I talk about it all the time, right? That's our life. We have probably a very, very little else going on, right? But the truth is, we do talk about it. We drill and train all the time. Do you have tools so that people can increase their level of confidence about communicating the case for life action in their own communities? Do you have tools that you can share? I know you've got a great website. If that's a good place to start, please tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things that different people can do. And, oftentimes when we come to communities and we speak to a variety of different people, whether they're Christians or just part of the pro-life community, they often don't have too much political experience, and politics is something that they don't really want to enter into. They're fine to pray or maybe to hold up a sign here and there, but, they don't know anything about different political issues, so they don't feel as comfortable. But you actually don't need to know much to actually be effective in politics. It's really a very simple game, a numbers game. So for example, if I go into a community and I'm speaking to 10 or 15 people, maybe to the average group, 10 or 15 people isn't a lot. But if I am able to activate those 10 people to then volunteer for a local pro-life candidate, each of them volunteers 1 hour, 1 week during an 8 week campaign, oftentimes they can make the difference identifying supporters that will make the difference between that candidate winning or losing.
Right.
So 10 people is actually extremely effective in the political world. And maybe not in other areas of the pro-life movement. So that's ultimately what we want to do, is just to educate people on how simple it is to be effective in the political activism side of the pro-life movement, and then give them the tools to do that. So whether it's going on our website, which is itstartsrightnow.ca, there's lots of educational materials on political issues and the political structure in Canada. And then also my business partner and I and others who have worked for our organization have traveled all across the country and are still doing that to do these presentations.
Mm.
We started in 2016, and over the years we've perfected it. So it's very straightforward. It's very interactive. I think people feel very confident after they hear it. And then, you know, you can go on and you can volunteer, or you can run a petition drive, which then helps identify more pro-lifers in your riding, and do different things that will really affect change, not only in your city, but all across the country.
Absolutely. Now, I know there's people on this call here today that when they think about the idea that they could have Alissa come into their community and give a presentation on this issue to their friends and people in their sphere of influence, that's got to be intriguing for them, because it gives them confidence. Sometimes people feel a little uncomfortable standing up in front of people themselves, but I've seen your presentation. I know how awesome it is. But what can people do in advance of you coming to, because ultimately I hope and I pray that the people will not hesitate to get in touch with you right now and arrange those personal invitations for you to come to their community and make a presentation. But what can they do to prepare for your arrival so that they've got, you know, a few people in a room ready to go when you get there?
Yeah, I mean, you can just invite people in your close circle of friends, whether it's family or friends. Oftentimes, my favorite types of presentations are like the kitchen parties, where
Mm,
there's just coffee and Timbits, and I am there, and we're able to have this sort of intimate back and forth, and I can
fantastic.
explain different things that they can do in the community, and give them, you know, any type of information, or you know, leaflets or pamphlets or anything that will help them in the future. And then oftentimes those kind of more intimate presentations, they're way more interactive because people feel more comfortable asking questions and going back and forth. And so I
Right.
think that when we're finished, people feel very confident. And oftentimes I'll even just stick around. And if there's a campaign going on, I'll go door knocking the next day with a candidate and bring those people along so they can join in if they're, you know, still feeling hesitant. But you know, that would be the first thing. If you're unsure of, you know, where to find people, or maybe you don't have a circle of people that you think are like-minded, if you belong to some sort of a church community, running a petition drive is always very helpful. If usually pastors and priests are very open to just having a petition in the back of church, they'll often make an announcement after service, and then people on their way out the door can just sign a petition. And this is good symbolically to show that there's support for these issues, but it's also good because then these people will be added into a database, they'll be contacted. Oftentimes, if you're the one who's standing at the back of church, people will come up to you, and the kind of people who have a fire in their soul about these issues will then talk to you a lot more about that you'll develop a relationship or start a relationship that way. So there's multifold positives for doing even something as simple as a petition drive in the back of your church, which is even a step away from having a presentation if you're not feeling called to that right now.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure excited at the possibilities. If people connect directly with your organization, I'm going to put your website, your web address in the post briefing notes today. I'm also going to draw special attention, if you would, everyone on the call, please make a note of where the donate button is and the partnership materials are for It Starts Right Now. Alissa and Scott are out there doing fantastic work across the nation, and it takes fuel to fuel that machine. So that costs money. So partner with them, help them move along, and then get active locally and invite them in and have them sit down around the table. I'm sure it'll be a positive experience for you all. Thanks, Alissa, for coming today. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me on.
Have a great day.
You too.
Okay, so there you have it. Alissa Golob on her website, tools for you to use to bring people together around you. Next guest, here we go. This is Cathy Peters. She is an anti-human trafficking educator. We have, as a resource partner here, best information in Canada on the subject. And of course, with this recent movie release that we're going to talk about here today, you can use this information to rally support around you to build your local coalition. Here's Cathy. Well, thank you so much, Cathy, for taking some time to join us here today. It's always good to have you on the briefing. You always have so many things on the go, but you make this time for us. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Doug, so much.
Now, today we're actually having this chat at a very interesting time because just recently, not only here in Canada, but around the world, a movie has been released called The Sound of Freedom, as you know, and as everybody also knows on the briefing, that has raised the level of awareness in people's minds of something that you and I have been talking about for quite some time, and you have been working exclusively with here in Canada for quite some time, and that is the subject of human trafficking. Interesting times.
It is indeed. And again, the timing of this movie, I can't believe that was sort of done, what, 8 years ago when they started it. And now it's finally out. And I just am very grateful for the timing. Again, I am going to hold my book right up at the beginning because
Good.
I finally, you all can get it on Amazon or online or through your bookstores. It's Child Sex Trafficking in Canada and How to Stop It. I want everybody to understand Canada is not immune. Canada is not immune. And my goal is not to frighten anybody, but to empower you. So the number one thing you can do is get the book, get 2 copies. That's all you have to do. One for yourself, read it to your family, just get to know the material. And then one other copy for your local library or your local school board or local schools.
Right.
I've already done that where I live. I've given a copy. Well, I've gone a little further. I've given a copy to my MP, my MLA, the RCMP detachment, my mayor, city council, and the school district. And I've got copies in 3 libraries in the area that I live. So I feel I've kind of blanketed my community. And that's what you all can do. And make sure your church leaders, your pastors, your
Right.
doctor has access to this book.
Absolutely. And again, this is what's so interesting about this is that Cathy, you've been providing solutions, you've been providing information, you've been providing the answer to that question, what can I do about human trafficking in my local community and where I live in my sphere of influence? And you've been answering that question for a long time. And many people who went to the movie Sound of Freedom walked out of that movie with that question in their minds. They go, well, great. Now I know that this is such a pervasive problem within our society and culture. What is it that I can do? You also, aside from your book, have, and I've pointed this out so many times to people, but we need people to know that this is available on your website. Tell us about the resources that are available on your website that people can download there.
Well, the fun thing is my website, it's so simple. It's basically on one page. You can just scroll it down. All my resources and research and what you can do are there. I've got downloadable handouts. Just press and you can, open up all my material. I mean, really, it's the information I've got in my book. I go into a lot more detail here, and I've got everything sourced here. So you got the stats and the stories here. But my recent interviews, for example, I was asked to go to Ottawa and present to the Federal Status of Women Committee. And I've put that presentation up on my website. I also presented at the Canadian Sexual Exploitation Summit. That was a really good opportunity. And you can watch that. I've put it up on the website. And again, I go over specifics as to what you can do because I don't want people afraid. That's a big thing. That does not work, but there really is a lot we can do. And the good news is in Canada, we're now getting more and more sort of resources, and I point people to 3. So the Public Safety Canada now has a great website on human trafficking. Lots of great resources there. They've even got a really short little video that you can share with people to sort of introduce them to this topic. It's 1 minute and 15 seconds. So there's your interview, just sort of overview to go over it. But here's the National Human Trafficking Hotline number that everybody has to know. 24/7, you can get help from social workers. They've got 200 different languages, any corner in BC. This number is really important. And then lastly, we have a lot of cyberbullying happening online. This happens, access to children really is happening predominantly online. Cybertip.ca, again, you're going to get tons of help here, resources for parents. So you know what to do. If your child is being cyberbullied, this is where you go to get help. This organization is one of the best globally. So we do have great resources here. And I do want to hold up this poster. You can get free posters from the Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking. I get these posters by the hundreds. You
Right.
can order these and postcards and wallet cards, and you can hand these out, take them to church, take them to your community center, get these handed out, give them to your city council, to your mayor. It doesn't take much to make a difference. And I'm always going to say, if you suspect anything, report, 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 report to the police. They are your best friends. The biggest problem in Canada, they say we don't have a problem with this, is because people aren't reporting. They see lots of stuff going on. They
Right.
don't report. So even if they can't do anything, they say they can't do anything, even though you haven't had results in the past, report anyways, because at some point they build a file. And then what they say to the politicians, oh, actually, we're getting a lot of reports on this. We do have a problem. The hardest thing for me, because I really focus on politicians, is they try to tell me they don't have a problem in their community. Well, it's because people aren't reporting it. So if you are concerned about a situation, report it to the police like that, just immediately do that.
Right.
But the second part is phone that hotline number. I phone just for fun to make sure somebody's going to answer the phone. Just phone it. You can get help, you can get guidance, and they will point you to resources anywhere you need. So we're at a tipping point in Canada in that we've got the resources, and a lot of them are like global top, excellent resources. They're there, but you need to use them or we lose them.
Right. No, that's great advice, Cathy. And I want to just expand on one thing that you mentioned there, and that is in the function of sharing resources, like for instance, the posters and the postcards. The thing about these resources is that some people think that it's a matter of just sharing information to raise the level of awareness in other people's minds about the issue, which is true. That is a goal line thing. But one of the other reasons that you share resources is there are people out there just like you who have a heart for vulnerable citizens that live among us in our communities, and they are going to bed every night praying to God that somebody would provide them with some information that can help direct them as to what they can do personally to actually respond to the call they feel there is on their life to do something. But these resources, Cathy's book, Cathy's website, the resources from these other websites, you can gather around you a coalition of people who are interested and have a desire in their hearts to take action in this same area, and you can actually increase the magnitude of your own voice locally by gathering these people around you. So think about it in two ways: sharing them, but also using them as tools to gather people around you. Have you seen that happen, Cathy, where other people have done that, where they get groups together and come to your presentations or go visit to local governments, municipal government meetings or what have you?
Absolutely. In British Columbia, we actually have something more formal called community action teams.
Mm,
And there's one community action team in particular in Victoria, it happens to be. And anytime I send them something, they send it out to their 300 contacts immediately. Those are the kind of groups somehow you want to tap into. So I would say to all of you, if you're a parent, get other parents together,
mm.
start talking about it, start praying about it. And I keep it simple. I say, learn about the issue, then share about it, and then alert. So it's learn,
Right.
share, alert. Just keep doing that, because I can always report to Doug what the current trends are, where things are, where the ship is going.
Right.
And when you get together in your parent groups or your community action groups, you can start to, nip it in the bud, is
Right.
how I put it. Let's just nip this stuff in the bud. And politicians will listen. Your mayor will listen. Your police will listen. If there's a group of you, even
Right.
4 or 5 of you, that come together and ask for a meeting. Now, here's your goal, everybody. You actually want to get a meeting at some point.
Right.
Write the letter. That's great. Send the email. That's not as effective, but it's a start. Pick up the phone and make the phone call. Nobody does it. And ask for a meeting. I mean, Doug Sharp knows I just ask for meetings all the time. That's all I do is ask for meetings, and I get meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. So I've done 650 meetings and presentations. That's how we get the word out. Do ask for the
Absolutely.
meeting with your mayor, your city council, etc.
Thank you, Cathy, for that. That's great action, call to action. So everybody knows now that, especially if you're within churches, did you guys hear that? Especially if you're within churches, you have access to the information, because we're going to provide it all for you in the post briefing notes today. You can take that information into your churches. You can build a small coalition of support around these ideas, and you can advance protections for vulnerable people within this world of human trafficking that is in fact swirling all around you, whether you know about it or not. Thank you for your time today, Cathy. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Doug.
The bear has been poked. It's time to wake up from our slumber
and stand together, united as one. One family, one body, one church.
We will not walk past the vulnerable.
Say nothing, do nothing, and turn a blind eye.
We are citizens of a great nation.
We are good Samaritans to our neighbors. You are not alone.
We are the largest unified voice in Canada. So we stand united. This is our rally cry. We are Christ to our nation. This is our battle cry. He shall have dominion from sea to sea, and from the river unto the ends of the earth. Righteousness will reign. Justice will prevail. We are united.
Okay, now on to the next resource partner of the National Leadership Briefing, a resource that you can use to build your coalition. We have Alex Schadenberg of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, the single best source in Canada for information regarding medical aid in dying and the conversation taking place around assisted suicide and euthanasia here in Canada. Well, thanks so much, Alex, for joining us today on the National Leadership Briefing. It's good to see you again. It's been a little while since we've had you on the briefing, and it's time for us to chat again.
Well, a lot of things have rolled along. The slippery slope is very slippery, and it's important to have this conversation.
First, I wanted to get an update from you, because we've traveled over much road, as you've said, here in Canada since 2014. Euthanasia here in Canada is at a whole new place than it was before. Why don't we start with giving us a recap of where we're at today? Where are we at presently in Canada when it comes to euthanasia and the euthanasia regime that was rolled out?
Well, as you know, the original law in 2016, and we did shows about that at the time, it was certainly very imprecise. It lacked definition. I predicted it would go further because of that. If you don't define a law, what happens? It gets defined by its practice, right? Those who do the act of killing people, they will define the meaning of the words of the law if it's not predefined, and that's exactly what we saw. But in 2021, March of 2021, we passed that Bill C7, which expanded euthanasia further, and we had a show about that at the time. And the fact of it is that what that did is it removed the little section of the law that said your natural death had to be reasonably foreseeable, which never was defined anyway. Nonetheless, it was the sort of little section of the law that held back this euthanasia for any reason almost whatsoever, and that's where we're coming to today. So what's left in the law, other than you have to be 18 years old, The law says you have to be suffering, but that's, you can't measure suffering. I can't, if I were a physician, I'm not a physician, but if I were a physician and a patient were to tell me they're suffering, I can't tell them they're not suffering. I'm not inside their body. I don't know what they're experiencing. So there's nothing, like, these things lack meaning is what I'm saying to you. But the law continues now to say that I have to have an irremediable medical condition. What is an irremediable medical condition? So what's happened is people with disabilities now, pretty much for almost any situation now, qualify, because a person with a disability, the reason they have a disability is they have some type of irremediable medical condition, whether that be, a significant physical condition or, etc. There's multiplicity of what a disability could mean. And so now we're seeing what we feared from the beginning, which, euthanasia for poverty. We're seeing euthanasia for homelessness, euthanasia because someone can't get medical treatment. I got a call in late 2021 from a mother telling me that her daughter was in British Columbia, and she had a rare medical condition, and she was not able to get medical treatment in Canada. But of course, if she wanted MAID, euthanasia, she could get it. And because of her medical condition, she could get it quickly because, she has a significant medical condition. Think about that. She could get medical treatment in the US, but she didn't have the money to go to the US. She couldn't get it here. And no matter what she did, there was no specialist to offer treatment here. And this is the kind of thing we were hearing. And this isn't the only one. Think about people with their long waiting lists. But what else happened with that Bill C-7 is it legalized euthanasia for mental illness alone,
Right.
but it had a 2-year waiting period on it. So as of March of 2023, we were supposed to then start putting in place this euthanasia for mental illness alone, but then the government backed off on that, and they made it till March of 2024. But still, they didn't reverse it. They just backed off on it. So now that I come to this point, I'm going to mention there is a bill in Parliament right now, and it is a fabulous private member's bill, and it is to reverse that. It is to take away that out of the law, that euthanasia for mental illness alone can't happen. It's to make that impossible. And hopefully that bill will pass. That's very important to me. Ed Fast is the sponsor of that bill, and it's an excellent bill. It's well written. It's very simple and straightforward, so no one can misinterpret what the bill is trying to say, right? And I think that's important that people start organizing around that. But let's go on. Euthanasia for mental illness is coming now, and in March of 2024. And as I say, euthanasia for mental illness alone. So let's think this through. Right now in Canada, what it means is if you ask for euthanasia and you have a terminal condition, that you're deemed that you have a terminal condition. Now, you don't have to be terminal in the sense that you're going to be dying tomorrow or the next day, but you have to have some condition which is deemed to be terminal. You could have a same-day death. That's how the law is written right now. You could have a same-day death. You can go into the doctor. You could be at your low time in your life. And because you have a terminal condition, you can be assessed and approved, and it can be signed off by a second doctor or nurse practitioner. You can die that same day, never having an opportunity to have a good day because your bad day was your dead day. But if you don't have a terminal condition, so let's say you have an irremediable medical condition, as I said, but it's more chronic, but it's not terminal, you could be approved for euthanasia, but you'd have to wait 90 days. So now let's think this through. How many people have medical conditions in Canada? How many people have need, as a prime example, a hip replacement? You need a hip replacement. Are you going to get it in 90 days? Honestly, but you can get death in 90 days, but you can't get your hip replacement in 90 days. Well, what about issues around mental illness now? So we're talking about rolling out euthanasia for mental illness as of March of 2024. And if you look at the waiting period, so if you consider this seriously and see how crazy our country has gone. Now, first of all, as you know, Doug, I'm opposed to killing people. So I believe euthanasia is always crazy. Nonetheless, now we're invoking euthanasia for mental illness. So it's very likely that somebody could be incapable of receiving their mental health care within the 90-day period, but they could die within 90 days. Right. And remember, our law in Canada does not require you to try medical treatment. So therefore, if you had, how would you say, a chronic psychiatric condition that's gone on for many years, you could be approved for death. You could die within 90 days, even though it's possible that you never receive treatment for your condition. That's the kind of thing that we're facing in Canada.
This is great information that as you're going over this is information that you share in your email updates that you send out from the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. And this is one of the things that I found as we've served the people that we serve on the National Leadership Briefing is the people that have the information and review it and study it and then communicate it to others on a regular basis, kind of drill and train sharing information, they're far
Yes.
more effective in communicating the issue like you are here today, because they've got the right information. So where can people get on your email update list so that they get the regular information so they can begin to share things as your understanding of the situation in Canada right now?
Well, if they email us at info@epcc.ca, which is on the screen right now, or
Okay.
then or just Google Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. I don't know if I should use the word Google, but anyway, you can just contact us and we immediately add you to our email list. And the email list is important because when you're reading an article in the Toronto Star and it seems like, oh, well, it seems like in Canada they have a really tight euthanasia law, and it seems like, oh, well, we're really not going to do this to very many people. Oh, no, we're not going to do this to children in Canada. You have to know the facts. Now, what are the other facts? What is so important? Well, Canada, it's so sad that, after we expanded euthanasia in March of 2021, our government decided to invoke a committee and look at further expansion. So it wasn't enough that we got rid of terminal illness. Then they strike this committee, they stack the committee with pro-death people, and then they come up with a report saying that Canada should extend euthanasia to mature minors and to people by advance directive. This is the kind of thing we get, that it's constant expansion, expansion, expansion. Now, thinking about this, when we legalized euthanasia, it was supposed to be, remember, I'm opposed to killing, so I'm opposed to all of this anyway, but it's not the point. The point of it is when we legalized this, it was all under the concept that these would be mature adults who are capable of consenting.
Right.
Are mature minors mature adults? Are people with mental illness capable of consenting? Like all of this was based on a sales game to get people to buy into the concept that killing's okay.
Right.
That's what it was about.
Yeah, and we now see that as again, you and I talked about this, is that this is the slippery slope, because we've never seen a situation anywhere in any other jurisdiction in the world where they have done this.
That's right.
And it has not immediately gone to the conversation of expanding eligibility. The final thing I wanted to just have you quickly review with us today is the importance that you feel there is in gathering people together in community around good information and around God's call on our life to care about the vulnerable. Talk a little bit about that and what you've done in that regard.
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, we have to recognize what it means to be human. How we are created, what makes us tick, what makes us healthy as human beings, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually healthy. And we recognize pretty quickly that we are made to be with others. That's how we're made to be. So the first part of that is, this is a culture which has got a lot of loneliness in it. So when you consider that right off the bat, the culture of death thrives in a culture of loneliness. So I think that as people who believe in life, believe in faith, who really care about others, we have to recognize the importance of being with others. Also, in your own communities, you have church communities, other communities that you're involved in. It's not good to have knowledge and not bother to share it. Sometimes you have to be careful, and there's times, there's a time and a place. I understand that, who's kidding who here. Nonetheless, we must gather with people and be with people. You're most healthy, you're most exceptional, you're most powerful when you're with others, because that's how you were made to be. You were made to be in family, interconnected, not a bunch of radical individuals, which is what the culture wants to tell you. Oh, you're just an individual. You can do what you want. No, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do or not to do, but I can tell you, you're made to be with others and to care for others. And in the same way, euthanasia has become a threat to your life too. It's important that we recognize being with others. It's important that we recognize, because we have to understand that, people in our own communities, our own faith communities, people who we know, some of them are dying by euthanasia. Is it because they were terrible people or they lacked respect for human life? And it's because they're a human being. A lot of people are lonely today. A lot of people are going through emotional, psychological feelings, and they might be experiencing a difficult health condition, whether that be physical or psychological, and they're feeling their life lacks meaning, purpose, or value. And they need someone to be there. They need someone to say to them, your life is important. You are important. You are made to be important, and you're important to me. They need somebody there who will say to them, no, that's not the right way to look at this. Yeah, I know you're going through a difficult time, but I will be here with you. You're not alone.
And you have a compassionate care program that we've been actually sharing that information for several years now. You have a 1-800 number. Tell us about how churches, for example, or communities of people can use these resources from the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition to help them come together.
Pick it up. That's better. Well, Compassionate Community Care is a separate charity. It's a separate corporation, but we do work with Compassionate Community Care, and it has a 1-800 helpline. And the interesting thing about the 1-800 helpline is that people call it all the time. It's getting calls constantly. And there are people going through very difficult times in their life, needing help, advice, security. But the other thing about the Compassionate Community Care is it does volunteer visitor training program sessions. So it trains people to visit, to be with others.
Now, we're going to share that tool in the post-briefing notes today. We're also going to share the information where you can connect with that weekly update email. It'll have information about the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition. Also, I am going to include, and make sure that this is included, the place where they can engage and participate as partners in your organization, Alex. And if you want to donate to Alex's work and to make sure that they have the resources to continue to do what they do, I'll make sure that's included as well. But there you have it, everybody. You have the best information that I know of in Canada. Alex and the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition, you have an encouragement from him and from me for you to come together around that good information, gather support, come into community, and then communicate it to others as a group. And then you also have tools that'll help you execute on the ground and to help protect those who are vulnerable within your community. Thanks so much, Alex, for being with us today. I sure appreciate your time, and we'll have you back and get another update down the road.
Excellent. Thank you, Doug.
If I had to go ahead and do what the doctors wanted me to do, I wouldn't have had her.
What was that?
Well, they wanted me to do assisted suicide death on her.
This is your story. You said a couple of things on the CBC News story. I remember they said, did you want to die? And what did you say?
I don't know. I don't want to go.
She got sick here at home. We got the ambulance. When we got her to the hospital, she was having seizures. They had to give her medication, take her heart rate down. Her heart rate was very high, top of 170. This doctor that was seeing her first, and he came in and he told me that her kidney wasn't in the right spot. He told me the lower parts of her lungs had collapsed, so they admitted her. And the next day, when he came in, he took me out in the hallway and he just stood me up against the wall and he told me about assisted suicide death was legal in Canada. And I said, well, he asked, did I know? And I said, no. And then he said he was all for it. And I said, well, that was your choice. And I told him I wasn't interested in anything to do with assisted suicide death. And he told me, he said I was being selfish and he wanted to assist me in doing this. And I said, I'm not interested. I more or less walked away from her. She heard everything.
Yeah.
And
You heard what the doctor said?
Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
Not feeling good.
like not once did she ever say to them, I want to end my life. Not once.
You said they talked about it a lot. Did they talk about it a lot with you?
Yeah.
And this doctor came in and next day after he told me about the assisted suicide death and stuck his face down in hers and said, do you know how sick you are? And I'm just like, and when I got his eyes contact, I went my eyes like that to get out in the hallway, and I told him, I said, don't you ever pull something like that again.
So at that time, were you worried that Candace was going to die?
They had us come told me that she was dying. I believed them. They were the doctors, and she was so sick. So, but I told her if she wanted to go, it was good. She could go. But she didn't. She don't cry, honey. But she didn't want me to be alone. Don't cry. It's all done now. It's over. We just don't want it to happen to anybody else, hey?
No.
Don't want another family to go through this.
Well, no matter how busy our agendas are on the National Leadership Briefing, we will always make time for valuable moments like that to remember why it is that we do what it is that we do, why we come together, why we believe it's valuable to advance our views and values into society, culture, politics, and government. That is an excellent example as to why we do what we do. Now, finally, John Hilton-O'Brien, Parent Choice for Education in Alberta. Now, if you're not in Alberta, remember, we bring these people to you because we feel there's national relevance to what it is that we're going to be discussing. So pay close attention to what John says here. And remember, this is someone who is a resource partner that with tools you can use to gather people around you and a coalition in your sphere of influence. Well, thank you so much, John, for taking the time to join us today. Sure appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I very much appreciate the invitation.
You guys do such amazing work serving parents who have a heart for their children and for school-age children in particular. And you have a great reputation across the country for the work you guys do. I really, really am glad that you're here today because we have a great need in Canada for this all across Canada. Now, you're out of Alberta, but everybody on the call today is kind of spread out over Canada, and they want to know what works best. So Parents for Choice does it top drawer. Let's get started with that. Where are you guys at these days? I mean, it's been a while since we provided an update about the organization. You're the new executive director effective March of 2021. And so give us an update. Where are you at these days?
People may recall that Alberta passed they passed a law that said you have to have a gay-straight alliance in school if a single student asks for one. And it does appear that some of them are an attempt to circumvent the laws that require teachers to get the consent of parents before doing sex education. So that's been a bit of a concern. But our NDP government doubled down on it, and they passed a law that said every school board must create a policy that says that, how does it go? Notification, if any, of clubs or organizations that deal with sexual or religious matters must be limited to the mere existence of such a club or activity. You can never communicate with parents about it regardless of circumstances. So when Mr. Kenney became Premier of Alberta, he removed the requirement for boards to have secrecy policies. But he didn't tell them to remove the secrecy policies. 2/3 of Alberta's school boards still have the secrecy policies, including, I'm sad to say, many Catholic boards. So we're currently actually putting together a petition to present to the legislature, which is made much more difficult by the fact that it has to be done on paper to be presented in the legislature. We can't settle for an electronic version.
Right.
So another thing that has come up in the last several years is that our Teachers Association distributes a resource called the PRISM Toolkits. They're books about 160 pages, one for elementary school, one for high school. And they start off by giving some statistics for activist teachers to explain what they're doing to their peers and their boss. Then they give legal advice to the effect that it's acceptable to keep secrets. Now, you know those laws that say if you're going to talk about sexuality in a lesson, you have to get the parents' consent?
Right.
That's not what the law says, not at all. What the law says is that if and only if the primary purpose of the lesson is teaching about sexuality, then and only then do you have to even inform parents, let alone get their consent. So the rest of these books are filled with lesson plans in which the topic is something else. However, the content is all about sexuality and gender. My favorite lesson plan is the one for a high school religion class entitled How Homophobia Leads Us into Sin. So because of that, we're starting to look with other organizations at the prospect of doing some sort of parental rights bill, which, among other things, would address materials used in classrooms and make sure that there's some sort of consent given by parents.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds like great work.
The last thing that we noticed was over the last few years, there have been some elections for school trustees. And we found that certain groups had put a lot of money into them. So during the last school board elections in Alberta, for instance, our teachers union spent $1.1 million as a third-party advertiser attacking the government over the curriculum. Over in Ontario, the Ontario Secondary Schools Federation spent $900,000 as a third-party advertiser. But unlike in Alberta, they were able to openly endorse candidates. And I believe they got, out of 130 races I tracked, they'd endorsed 85 candidates, and 58 of them were elected. And as a result, the OSSTF controls a lot of very large school boards. Those are budgets in the billions of dollars with a B, and they are Canada's most successful political party. So we started intervening. We started a bid in 2021. We ran some courses for people who were considering becoming candidates for school trustee. A dozen of the people we trained actually ran, and 4 of them won. Half of the people who ran, though, ran up against a union political action committee in Calgary that spent $1.7 million to elect a friendly council, mayor, and public school board. So that was quite a machine. This year, we're starting early. We're starting at least a couple of years before the Alberta elections. And I'm already out doing training sessions. I did the first one earlier this month, and I've got 2 more so far planned for Calgary and Edmonton. And of course, this is something I can take on the road. If someone needs a workshop done in British Columbia or Ontario or something, I can take it on the road.
Fantastic.
So these are the things that we're working on right now.
Okay, well, I'm so glad that you broke that down into those different segments, because you've touched on a lot of pain points of parents across the nation. Obviously, this secrecy and keeping information from parents, that is a concern that's common to parents all across Canada in all provinces and territories. We've also got this issue of the curriculum. These curriculums are not unique to Alberta, and the concern, the structure and the content of the curriculums is not unique to Alberta. And then finally, these school board elections that are happening in all of the provinces across the country are of interest to parents. So what I wanted to do is because we've got all of these people across the country that love when they see things done right, the way you do it right, as you're addressing all of these concerns, how can people track with you if they wanted to watch you do what you do to become familiar with the work of your organization, so perhaps they could duplicate your efforts in their own provinces? How would they best get in touch with you and then receive ongoing information from your organization just to keep up to date?
Well, the simplest way is to go on to our website at parentchoice.ca. Not an S in the middle, it's parentchoice.ca.
Right.
And sign up for our newsletter. We do not bombard people. We do roughly 4 emails a year on the whole, except for special events. Once in a while, we'll say, we're coming to do a workshop or a talk near you. Would you like to come? So we try to keep it low. And people can also send a note saying, hey, I'm trying to build an organization wherever they are. Could you give me a call and we'll chat? So I can certainly talk about organizing with people, and I can also take school board election training on the road, because that's pretty common to all provinces.
That's quite an offer you just made. Okay, first of all, then, yes, we are going to, in the post-briefing notes today, then, John, we will share your contact webpage with everyone where they can sign up for your newsletter. I'm also going to make sure that they have your email address directly, because that offer that you just made of being willing to help people build coalitions in their own communities is something that we hear an awful lot. We get calls here at the briefing often, and we talk about you guys and what you accomplished in Alberta. And we tell them, look, just duplicate what's working. And in Alberta, you guys have really done it upright. So I'll make sure people get your email address. And I'm also going to make sure, John, just because I know the value of the work that you do, I want to make sure that the people that we serve have access to the part of your website where they can partner with you, because sowing into this kind of work, I believe, brings great blessing to people. So I want to give everyone an opportunity to sow into your organization and become a financial partner as well. So thank you so much for your time today, John. My gosh, I wish we had more time, but we're going to have you back again. I sure appreciate you coming to sharing the update with us and what we can do moving forward. Okay, that brings us to the top of the hour and all the time we have for today. However, I did tell you that we were going to have a special announcement, and that, of course, is our next Transformer Zoom call that is coming up on August the 10th. Now, this event that's coming up is yet another opportunity for you to build your sphere of influence, gathering people around you who have a heart for your community, building your citizen action coalitions locally, these community action councils. If you have a heart for your community, and so do people around you, please make note of this final video that we're going to show you here today. On the bottom, there's a registration link where you can join us for the next Transformer Zoom call on August the 10th. All right, everybody, thank you so much for your time today and your attention. Thank you for being a part of the work that we do here. We so appreciate your partnership. For those of you who contribute to our organization financially, we thank you so much for that. It makes it possible for what we do here. And please, make note of the email address on the bottom of this video again, so that you can register for this Transformer Zoom call. All right, in the meantime, and until next time, God bless you, God bless your family, and may God continue to bless this great nation of Canada. Bye for now.
We're crying out for the church to be the church in the community.
The ecclesia is a relational model that God has been calling forward.
Being present is about showing up on a regular basis.
I'm convinced that God will birth a love in one's heart for the place He has put you in. And sometimes that requires a process. Sometimes we don't initially love the place where we are or where God is sending us, but we respond in obedience.
And I believe there must be the restoration of the cry of God in the heart of us as leaders, to cry out to God for our cities.
And for those of you who have a heart for your local community, then I would encourage you to participate in what we call Transformer Calls, focused on your engagement and the love that you have for your communities.